In 1922, in the small town of Farana, a boy was born who would grow to challenge empires. Ahmed Sékou Touré was not born into power, but into a world where Africans bowed to colonial masters. As a young man, he refused to kneel. When the French tried to expel him from school for leading a protest, he simply taught himself, proving that education is not given, it is taken. As a young man, Sékou Touré entered the workforce under French colonial rule. He saw how African workers were underpaid, disrespected, and silenced. Refusing to accept this, he joined trade unions, where his voice rose like a drumbeat for justice. Tirelessly, he organized strikes and spoke out, believing that dignity was a right, not a privilege. By the 1940s, Guinea's workers toiled under harsh colonial rule. Wages were low, rights were few, and dignity was stolen daily. Ahmed Sékou Touré rose through the ranks of the Postal Service, becoming a powerful voice in the labor movement. As head of the Postal Workers Union, he led strikes that shook the colonial administration, proving that organized resistance could rattle the empire's foundations. By the late 1940s, Ahmed Sékou Touré was no longer just a postal clerk. He had become a voice for the people. In the markets of Conakry, he listened to traders' struggles. In small, crowded rooms, he debated the ideas of freedom and justice with fellow thinkers. Inspired by the dream of African self-rule, Touré began addressing gatherings, his words stirring hope and pride. But the French colonial authorities watched closely, wary of the young man whose voice was growing louder each day. In 1958, when France offered its colonies a choice, remain tied to Paris or choose independence, Sékou Touré's voice thundered across Africa. We prefer poverty and freedom to riches and slavery. Guinea voted no to continued French rule, the only colony to do so. In retaliation, France withdrew overnight, dismantling infrastructure and leaving chaos. But Sékou Touré stood firm, declaring Guinea's birth as a sovereign nation. Independence brought pride, but also isolation. With France gone, Guinea was left without resources, experts, or international support. Sékou Touré turned to the Soviet Union and other socialist allies for aid, hoping to rebuild the nation. The streets of Conakry echoed with revolutionary songs, and the people worked tirelessly to shape their own destiny. But the road ahead was steep, and enemies, both within and beyond Guinea's borders, were watching. As the years passed, the euphoria of independence began to fade. Promises of unity were challenged by whispers of dissent. Political rivals, once allies, now plotted in shadows. Foreign powers, stung by Guinea's defiance, tightened their grip through sanctions and secret influence. Sékou Touré stood firm, convinced that his vision was the only path to sovereignty. But in his determination, suspicion grew. Friends became enemies in his eyes, and opposition was met with an iron hand. The leader who had inspired a nation now faced a storm that threatened to consume him from within. Touré ruled Guinea for 26 years, his reign a paradox. He built schools, hospitals, and championed African culture, yet silenced dissent with an iron fist. Opposition meant exile, prison, or worse. Some saw him as a liberator, others as a tyrant. When he died in 1984, Guinea stood divided, mourning and relieved all at once.